And really, this entire little mini scene was filmed from 3 different camera positions, or we call them setups in English, meaning you have to set up the camera and the lights for each shot. So again, this is maybe simpler and less artistic than the official storyboard, but again, you can kind of visualize what you're going to do, and you can show it to somebody. Anyway, I'm going to pick up the pace here. Anyway, once you get all these shots, then the next thing is to cut them together. You know, that's with the editing. As Bennett said, this is a really important part of the process. It's where you forget what the script said, because immediately it only matters what you have on film. That's the reality. The script is no longer relevant. It's what you really have. So when you cut them together, the sort of traditional Hollywood thing was to go from the wide shot, the establishing shot, to a long shot, to a medium shot, to a close-up, because this sort of set up where you're at. You see the long shot, oh, we're at that house, and now we're getting closer. Oh, there's a woman, and she has a tree. Now we're getting closer. We see she's reacting to the tree. Well, here's a close-up. She's concerned about the lemon. You know, you work your way in. But now a lot of films will start the opposite way. They might start on a close-up of my hands typing on a computer, and then pull back to reveal me in my house busy trying to write the screenplay to get it done in time. So initially, we don't know where we're at. All we see is a computer keyboard or something. But when the camera pulls back, now we know where we're at. So this sort of traditional wide, close, closer, closer, closer type of thing is that's left over from, again, in the early days, they were trying to train people that when we're cutting from one angle to another, don't be confused. We're still in the same place. It's okay. But you know, if too big of a jump can be disconcerting. Okay, too little of a jump. If it's too little, it's jumps. Like, watch this. Okay, this shot. These are the same ones as earlier. To this, if I'm cutting back and forth like that, it's kind of jarring because it's almost the same size, but it's not. It's just slightly different, and it looks more like a jump. But if you were to cut to a close-up from the wide shot, it wouldn't, even though it's a much more extreme change, it's actually smoother. Why that is, I don't know, but anyway, that is. And conversely, if you have, again, here's another angle. This, again, these are from earlier, but you see if I cut between these two, she appears to be popping from one place to another. It's very confusing. We go like that. It's what we call a jump cut in English. It just means you kind of make the audience jump when it happens. And most of the time, the audience won't know why, but just something in their brain says, oh, mistake. Oh, I'm uncomfortable. And so you want to avoid that because you don't want to upset your audience. Let's see. And another thing to take into account too, of course, is when you're editing something, if you go too fast, that can be upsetting too, because if it takes a certain amount of time for an audience to see a shot and go, oh, I know what that is. That's a close-up of a person. Oh, that's a close-up of a duck. That's a close-up of a dog or whatever like that. But if you cut them very quickly, a lot of times you don't know what's going on. And I felt that way. I don't know about you guys, but the last Bond film, James Bond film, The Quantum of Solace, a lot of the action scenes in that film, to me, were cut so fast that I had a hard time telling what was going on. You know, in the end, you knew something went on because the boat blew up or the car went off a cliff and the bad guys were killed and our hero was saved. But I couldn't really tell exactly how he did it. And I'm sure the shots, if you had taken the individual shots and looked at them, you'd say, oh, I see, he did this. Okay, now he did this and that. Oh, and then the boat blows up. I understand. But it happened so fast I couldn't tell. So you have to be careful because you as the filmmaker knows what it's supposed to be, but it doesn't mean the audience knows. You have to give them time to see it. Now, a lot of what I've been talking about, obviously the cameraman will be taking care of your photography for you, and you'll have a film editor who will be helping you with the editing. But I mention all this because you as the director have to supply the material. You know, in the end, what you get in the editing room is what you've shot. And if you come in and the editor says, well, we can cut those shots together, but it's going to jump. It isn't going to be very smooth. Well, that's your fault. So it's important for directors to know this. Let's fast forward here. A lot of suspense. When you're doing a show, the order you show something is very important, okay? It could be conceptually within a story, like a murder mystery. There's two kinds of murder mysteries. One is what we call the whodunit, where you don't know who is the murderer or the bad guy until the very end. In the whole movie, you're on the trail of finding out who that person was. The other one is where you know fairly early in the movie who the bad guy is, but you don't. But the hero has to figure out how to foil their evil plan. Again, Raiders of the Lost Ark is a good example. We know very early that the French guy Belloc is the bad guy and the Nazis are the bad guys. There's no question about that. We know that from real too. But how is Indiana Jones going to stop their plan and get the Ark back for himself? So that's a different. So the suspense isn't in knowing who the bad guy is; it's in how he's going to do it. And a lot of the Hitchcock films were this way too. We knew who the murderer was. We knew who the enemy spy was. We just didn't know how the bad guy was going to. I mean, the good guy was going to foil their plan. And sometimes this works an advantage too, because if we know that that guy there is a murderer, okay, and the girl here in the front row next to him doesn't know it, and they're amazingly, everybody here isn't here, just those two people. We will worry about that maybe he's going to murder her, but so there's a lot of suspense because we don't know if he's going to attack her or try and kill her or he's going to try and not kill her or whatever. So that is suspense. That makes the film exciting to us. So sometimes knowing ahead of time really helps. Same thing for comedy. When are you going to reveal the thing? A very old-fashioned thing, right? A man walks along, somebody has dropped a banana peel on the ground, right? Hits like, right? Slip. That's like some of the earliest films, comedies have slipping on the banana thing, or the pie in the face, or something like that. Well, after they did that just a couple times, it's like, okay, I understand, been there, done it. So now, instead of just, I'm walking along and I happen to hit a banana peel and I slip and it's funny. Now, if you see ahead of time that there's a banana peel there, then you're waiting for me to slip on it. And it's more funny because you don't know when I'm going to do it. A good example of that is in Modern Times. I don't know if you've seen that, the Charlie Chaplin film. There's a scene where he's skating and he's trying to impress the girl, so he puts a blindfold on so he can't see, and he's skating, and he doesn't realize it. He's on like the 3rd floor of, I think, a department store, but they're doing some construction, so there's like no, what do you call it, railing. And it's like drops down 3 or 4 stories to the ground. So he's skating around and he can't see, and he keeps getting closer and closer to the edge. And the suspense is, we're expecting he's going to fall off. And every time he gets close, he'll do something like this and go back, and he goes, and then that's the suspense. And of course, the final thing is that when he finally takes the blindfold off, is that he realizes where he's at, and then he starts to slip and almost falls. But when he doesn't know he's in danger, he's actually doing better. And the same thing too with the banana peel, okay? if we set up the banana peels over there and I'm talking to you and I get close to it and I walk away and I don't get the banana peel, okay, now I'm talking and I'm going back or something like that, and I almost do it, and we keep building up, and you're expecting me to slip on the banana peel, but I don't. But at the end, Chautrey comes in, and he comes in and slips on the banana peel, then that's the joke. Or the guy who dropped the banana peel. The guy who dropped the banana peel slips on the joke. So the thing is, if you set up the joke, and so people are expecting it, then it's actually more fun than it just happens. And the best thing is if you can get what we call the twist, the ending that's not what you're expecting. That the other guy slips on the banana peel, or something happens, or in the case of the murderer finds the guy we think is the murderer, he's the murderer, but it finds out that she's actually is also a murderer, and she kills him. So that's all about suspense. It's all about building suspense, and that's what makes your audience excited and want to keep watching the movie. Sometimes in suspense, the thing you don't see is scarier than the thing you do see. A good example of this is Jaws, the Spielberg film Jaws. For most of the movie, you never see the shark. You see just maybe a little piece of it, or the way the shark sees the people swimming in the water, and it's very scary because you don't know when you don't know what the monster looks like. It's scarier than when you actually see the monster. Because a lot of times in movies, when you actually see it, it's like a costume, or you go, well, okay, that's the monster, huh? Okay. But until you see it, it's actually much scarier. A similar thing was M. Night Shyamalan's film Signs. I don't know if you saw that, the one with Mel Gibson. There's a scene where the aliens are attacking his farm. There's a scene at the end where they're in the basement, the family, and they boarded the door up, and the aliens are trying to get in. And you never see the aliens, but you hear them moving around and beating and trying to get in, and it's very scary. And it's much scarier, I think, than if you had actually seen the aliens, because you really feel trapped in there. Okay. Now, I want to talk about now if you film the whole scene in one take. This is something that can be done. Like Quentin Tarantino did it in several scenes in Pulp Fiction. He filmed the entire scene in one camera position. Not necessarily the camera didn't move, but the camera doesn't cut. He walked, there's a scene near the beginning where they're talking about hamburgers when the two guys are going off to do some sort of a job. They're these two killers, and they're talking about hamburgers or something. I think McDonald's hamburgers, and they're walking into a building. You get out of a car and they walk into a building and they walk down a hall and they're talking about the thing. And the scene doesn't cut, it's one long take. Now you can do this, but it's a little risky because once you do this, the good news is you never have to worry about matching action. You don't have to worry about matching screen direction. You don't have to worry matching anything of that because it's all one take. You're not cutting. The bad news is when you get in the editing room, if you say, oh, the scene's too long, I want to cut part of it off, now you're stuck because the only way you can cut it is to cut off the part of the head or cut off part of the tail or the end. We call it the tail, but anyway, either the beginning or the end, that's all you can do. You can't cut in the middle. So it's an interesting thing to do, but you have to be careful, especially because sometimes maybe it feels too slow to you. Actors, a lot of times in scenes, actors love pauses. Maybe I'm talking too fast tonight, but a lot of actors will do this, and then, I want to tell you something. Film is very interesting, and you're going like, come on. So if you have if you film the scene from multiple angles, you can cut to another angle and get rid of some of these dead pauses. But if you only have one camera, then you're stuck with it. that performance, we're back to the very early days where we're filming the actors from one camera on this, doing their play, and that's it. There's nothing you can do. You can only make the head, cut off the head or cut off the tail. So what you need to do in a scene is get some coverage, because what we call a cutaway, something you can cut to, a close-up of something, or something that you can abridge the scene if you have to do it. This is one of the reasons why it's often better to shoot scenes from multiple angles. Even if you want to only use one angle, if you get the coverage, as we call it, then if it doesn't work, you can always go back. If the scene works great, you can do it in one take. If it doesn't, then you can cut. Another thing you might want to consider, the standard sort of thing is to whoever talks is on the screen. When the person is talking, that's the person you see on the screen. But a lot of times you want to see the person reacting to what they say. A great example is if I'm a judge and here's our murderer down here, right? And I'm saying, okay, this court has found you guilty and you're going to die. Now, it's more interesting to see his reaction to what I'm telling him than seeing me say it. So even though he's not saying anything, it would be better to cut to him than to see me saying this. Trying to cut along. Where am I? I'm totally lost now. Transitions. I want to show you transitions. Okay. This is again from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and this is where they go from one scene to another. This is fairly early in the movie, and they're going to go from San Francisco, where Indiana Jones is a university professor, to Nepal, where he's going to meet the girl. And this is the way it is in the movie.
You're talking about the boogeyman. Besides, you know what a cautious fellow are, eh?
So you can see we're setting up this airplane. This is some sort of seaplane from 1936, and but we never see this airplane again in the movie, so it isn't really important. We do set up this Tote is watching him, but we introduce him in the next scene when he comes in the bar. So we could have lost that scene. It wouldn't kill the story. We're building all this, and then they take off. This is a miniature that they did because the plane that they got into really wouldn't fly, so they had to do the actual flying scene with a miniature. And now we go to again, another digital shot of the plane flying and the map shot. This is very old-fashioned, following along on a map until we get to Nepal. And now it's hard to see, but this is the long shot of the bar in the snow with the Himalaya mountains behind it. And we go inside and we pick up the action. So now this long sequence, I didn't time it, but this long sequence, all that happens really is that Indiana Jones leaves, goes from his house to, well, actually he's not there yet, but we as the audience go from Indiana Jones's house to this bar in Nepal. The airplane isn't that important, what type of plane he took or anything like that, but what this sequence does is it kind of sets up the period. You kind of have a feeling for what it would be like to fly across the ocean in 1936. Having just flown across the ocean in 2011, now it takes about 12 hours, but you can imagine how long it would take to fly that in 1936 to go that distance. So it kind of gets you into the period, and it helps people that may not have had very good geography lessons and know exactly where Nepal is, so having the map helps. But But this is a very traditional filmmaking. And again, too, I think that Stephen and George, when they made this film, wanted to be in the style of the old movies. So they kind of did this way on purpose. But a lot of films now would, instead of just, they'd say, where are we going next? Oh, I'm going to Nepal. Cut. We see the mountains and maybe the long shot of Nepal, and you're in the bar. Now, the dialogue in the movie doesn't match that, but what I did was I edited it that way so you can see what it'd be like if we did that. Imagine Indiana Jones saying, the guy says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Nepal. Cut to the thing, and we're in Nepal. So we get there a lot faster. And nowadays, people tend to accept these sort of quick cuts more because we've seen so many movies, we're trained that we know what happens as long as the dialogue or something supports what this sort of thing. Let's see. The other thing they used to do, sometimes they would have these long, what we call montages, where you would have, a time transition of, the calendar pages falling off, or the spring leaves, and then the fall leaves, and the winter snow, and it's all to try and say that a year has gone by, or something like that in a movie. Somebody goes to jail and they're there for 5 years, and so there's some sort of quick montage of stuff that sort of just trying to tell the audience that it's been 5 years that the person has been in jail. But nowadays, you can do it, all these transitions a lot faster because people have kind of understand now the grammar of filmmaking, and so you can cut out a lot of this stuff that you see in old films. Kind of jump ahead. As far as editing, there's a thing that you get. There was a Russian filmmaker in the 20s in Russia named Sergei Eisenstein. I don't know. Some of you who've gone to film school and may have heard of him. He's a very famous filmmaker at that time. But he came up with this idea. He called it A plus B equals C. What it means is that when you have two shots and you put them together, that because the individual shot may be, when you put the two shots together, you get a reaction that is different than seeing each shot by itself. For an example, he found if he filmed a person not really reacting any one way, and he say a man, I'm just sort of sitting here like that, it was sort of a neutral expression, and he put the picture after, like, say, a child playing, that people said, oh, the man is happy. He's happy to see the child is playing, as maybe it's the child must be his son or his daughter, and people read all this stuff into this picture. When in reality, the pictures of the child and the man were photographed entirely different, and there was no relationship between the two. And then he found if he took the same picture of the man not reacting and put it, say, after a picture of say, a coffin, now the person that was happy to see the kid playing, people said, oh, he's sad because his friend died, or his wife died, or whatever. And people read into films all sorts of things that isn't necessarily intended. Or you can use this sometimes because you can create a relationship between different things that, because they're cut together, that people assume they go together. Again, I think going back to our sort of monkey brain is our brain tries to create order in a chaotic universe. When we see different things, we try to put them together. And so when you have different shots, that even though they're filmed at different times and different places and things, we try to make sense of it and make it all go together. I was going to show you now, this is a scene, One other example of that, this is a sound thing. There was a film I did not sound on years ago called Young Doctors in Love. It was a comedy about doctors in a hospital. And there was a scene where a doctor goes crazy and is chasing somebody with a gun, and then he suddenly realizes, oh my God, what am I doing? I could have hurt somebody. So he gives the gun to a patient. And the patient, the joke is the patient's going, Doc, you know, he wants to know, he says, how sick am I? And the doctor doesn't even realize what he's doing. He just gives the guy the gun because he's so dazed, how crazy. And the guy looks at the gun and goes, that bad, huh? Meaning the doctor, he thinks the doctor's saying you should shoot yourself. You're so sick. So that was the end of the scene. The doctor walked back out in the hall in the movie as the directors intended it. Well, I was going to screening, and just for fun, I decided to put a gunshot and a body fall in. And so when he walked out, the guy walked out, and then there was here a big bang, and the guy go boom, boom, onto the floor. But that's what we think. In reality, it was never filmed. The directors never intended it. I just put it in because I thought it was a funny joke that they would play once and then forget about it. But the directors liked it so much it's in the final film. It was a great joke. So this is a case of where I created a relationship that was never intended, it was never even filmed, but it ended up in the final film. And I'm going to show you a scene from one of Eisenstein's films. This is called The Battleship Potemkin. It's a silent film, so bear with me. It has music. 1925. And this is a scene where the Tsar, the king's soldiers are shooting the protesters. They're coming down the steps. And there's a scene in it with a baby carriage. Now, those of you who've seen Brian De Palma's Scarface movie, you know, if you've seen that movie, Scarface, about Al Capone in Chicago in the 1920s, this is where he gets, in the big shootout near the end, there's a baby carriage going down the steps. And this is where Brian De Palma stole that from. So. Anyway, so the thing is that Eisenstein used all these reactions. He cut away to various people, like the student, the young boy. See, again, I read into it. I don't know if he's a student, but he's looked like a student to me, reacting to this and watching. And the boy, in a way, represents the audience, the horror, the disgust at what's going on, that these people are shooting these unarmed civilians and things like that. But these shots were all shot independently. They were all shot in different setups. They may have been shot days apart. We don't know. But when you cut them all together, the relationship is there. And we read in that the boy is concerned about the baby, and maybe the girl is, the older woman is concerned about the baby, and the soldier is, you know, injuring the woman. You never see the blade of the soldier hit the woman, just the cutting from him to the wound on her face, we assume he has. So this is all set up and edited. It's all the relationships that only exist in editing. You notice also, too, the thing is cut on the rhythm of the soldiers marching, the sequence is... So today, well, we did have music, but anyway, they used the timings of the soldiers marching to cut the sequence. I want to show you one other sequence just about this. This is from just after that in the movie. And this is kind of a famous scene if you know the movie. But he's used statues that we all know statues don't move. They're made out of stone. But he's used them to give the appearance of motion. This is just a short scene. This is the battleship. It's shelling the city. So what was interesting about that, like I said, is that he's used these, well, there are actually three, like the second one is the most obvious. There's three separate shots of lions. One is lying down, one is sort of halfway up, and the other one's standing. And it looks like the lion is going like, what's going on? I'm outraged that the Tsar would be doing this to the people. You know, it was this very revolutionary film. But he did it with statues. I mean, it's very creative, and so this is the kind of thing you can do. Again, you as the director have to decide, what are we going to see at any one point? So let's talk about shooting, okay? Now, production, as Bennett would say. The biggest thing in shooting is time. What time is it anyway, speaking of which? Oh my God, it's getting late. Well, let me go through this real fast. The main thing about it I'm going to say is that you've only got so much time to shoot a movie, okay? Well, if you're shooting a day scene, the sun is only so up there for so many hours, then it goes down and it's night. And you can't, it's pretty hard to get enough lights out there to make night look like day. You could do a short close-up maybe that way, but so the point is you have to budget your time. You have to go in and you have to have a plan, what you're going to shoot, a shot list, storyboard, something that you can do, and to get done within the time. Or night. I've done all-night shooting, and then now it's a hurry, hurry, we're losing our dark as the sun is coming up. So you have to figure out what you want to get, and you have to get the most important things first. You know, you might want to experiment with doing something else. You might want to fool around with the actors. Again, this is, if you know, the more money and time, money equals time, okay? This is Hollywood, it's Beijing, it's everywhere. Money equals time. So the more money you have for a prop film, the more time you can spend on something. I think, what did he say? Bennett said Tarantino gets 15 setups a day. So some directors do a lot with actors. They'll shoot many different alternate takes. They'll fool around, say, oh, let's do one where you're very subdued and quiet, and one where you're more upset about it, you know, thing like that. Or in comedies, I've seen where they'll do different takes. They'll do different things because they'll say, oh, you know, it'd be funny if he actually puts his foot on the banana peel but doesn't slip or something. You know, there's so many things you can do, and a lot of times you want to get as much as you can, but at the same time you can't do 500 takes or 50 takes of one setup and then say, well, I didn't have time to shoot the rest of the scene, but we got 50 takes of almost stepping on a banana. So you have to budget your time, okay? Because the worst thing you can do is you can go over a little bit maybe occasionally in some area, but in general, you want to come in on time and on budget, or else they might say, well, we're not going to hire him or her again. Ran the budget way up. One way you can do that is you can use multiple cameras. You can shoot more than one angle at a time. But it's a compromise. Everything is a compromise. This is one thing I've always said. Filmmaking is a series of compromises. We go into the film and we think it's going to be the greatest movie ever. It's going to be so wonderful. Everything's going to be great. We got the great actor. We got the great cameraman. Everything's going to be wonderful. But as you go along, there's always going to be something where you're disappointed that something doesn't come out the way you want, or maybe you didn't get the actor you want. You have to have another actor, and you don't really like that one as much. And you wanted to shoot in this theater, but you couldn't get this theater, so you have to shoot in another thing. And maybe it's not even the theater. You have to fake it's a theater by putting chairs in a row or something. You know, there's all these compromises you do, and you have to do that because the movie has to keep going forward. I've said it's kind of like, you know, they say sharks have to keep swimming forward or the shark will die. And as director, you have to keep the movie company moving forward, because in addition to being an artist, a director is the foreman of a job, okay? I mean, if you're a construction company, you have a foreman, and the foreman says, okay, you dig a hole over there about that deep. And you, I want you to take those wood and stack it over there or whatever, and you go put the roof on or whatever. So the director is in addition to being an artist, is a foreman. So you have to budget for the time and the money and to keep the job on budget and on schedule. Like I said, you can use multiple cameras, but that's a compromise because the lighting might have to be changed in order that it looks good or halfway decent for both two cameras. Same thing for sound. If I have a wide shot filming the whole stage and also a close-up of me at the same time, we can't get the microphone in. Well, you could hear because I'm speaking to you, but if I wasn't speaking to you as a lecturer, but I was just supposed to be a person without a microphone, if we're doing the wide shot at the same time, the microphone has to be further back, so you don't get as good a sound recording. It's a compromise. But you shoot faster. You get two setups at once. So, you know, you as a director are going to have to pick your battles. That's the old, I don't know, Chinese have that term, choosing your battles. It means you can't, if you're in a war, you can't necessarily win all the battles, but you have to win the important ones. So you're going to have to give up on something in a turn to get something else. And that's why having plans is very important. But at the same time, if you see something really great, don't say, well, it wasn't on my shot list, or I didn't have a storyboard for that. You know, just go for it. Get it. If you think it's really good, get it. And a lot of times the storyboards or the shot list or what your plan is just something to start from. That the relationship that I showed you, those storyboards there, we ended up changing stuff around once we got there because those storyboards were done in Los Angeles. Okay, so you have to have a plan, but if you feel strongly about it, don't feel bad about compromising, not compromising, but about going another direction because it might be the thing that makes it really cool. There's a scene. Where are we? Here. This is from a film called She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. See the storm? Whoops. This is about the U.S. cavalry fighting Indians. And they're moving along, and they have a wounded man in a wagon, and they can't stop because of the thing, but they have to do surgery on the man in the wagon. So when Ford was going to shoot the scene, he didn't expect. Now this would have been shot in the studio. It looks a little artificial, but when they were going to shoot the scene, they didn't plan on having a storm. The storm just came up. And in fact, the cameraman said, we can't shoot the scene, there's a storm. And John Ford, the director, said, no, we have to shoot it, the storm's great. So the cameraman said, all right, we'll shoot it, but it's going to look terrible. You know, I'm doing it under protest. And well, it ended up really powerful. And in a way, the storm makes the scene much better and much more powerful than if it had been a beautiful blue sky. And interestingly, the cameraman won an Academy Award that year. I don't know if it was those shots specifically, but anyway, he won an Academy Award. So sometimes, you know, the DP has to listen to the director. Let's see, where was I? Complex dolly shots. Again, we were talking about how a dolly shot can do a whole scene. Yes, you can move the dollies around and stuff, but it takes a long time to set up any one of these. A lot of times you have to put track down if you're on dirt. This Genghis Khan movie, every time I wanted to move the camera, we had to put track down. The track has to be level. It takes a long time to set up track. It takes even longer to set up the crane because the crane is huge. It's very, if you set up the crane and you say, you know, I really wish the crane was a little bit that way. It took so long to take the crane down and move the crane over there to reset it up. So now as a director, I'm going like, oh, I'd really like the crane that way, but do we have time to move it? Or can I compromise and leave the crane over here and aim the camera that way instead of being over there and shooting this way? You know, like I said, it's all a series of compromises, because if you give up and say the crane has to be exactly there, then maybe I'm going to lose another whole shot I want to get later on at the end of the day. So you just got to keep moving forward. And the scene I was going to show you, it's from a movie called Touch of Evil from 1958. It's an Orson Welles film. And he was rehearsing and rehearsing on these scenes, and the executives from Universal were going nuts because they were worried that the film was going to go over budget, that he wouldn't, you know, because it was like afternoon and he hadn't even gotten one shot in the can, as we call it, because it was a film used to come in a can. So when you say in the can, it meant you completed the shot. But when all was said and done, he got this entire long scene done in one long shot. But it was really complex. I'm going to show you the shot. You have to imagine all these people like crossing roads and cars and goats, and all this stuff is happening. It all has to be rehearsed. And they shot this scene a number of times, and I read that the guy who plays the border guard kept blowing his lines. And so the sun was just about to come up. This was the last take. If they couldn't make another take after this, or that would be too light. And so Wells said to the actor, he said, if you can't remember your line, don't say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Wells." You know, just move your lips. We'll put something in later on, you know, because we got to get it. So it looks like the actor remembered his lines in this take. But anyway, watch this shot. And imagine, too, this is not being done with the little lightweight cameras like we have now. This is being done with a giant Mitchell BNC and a blimp on a giant crane. And it's an amazing shot.